Hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Linda Booth, and I'm the founder of Just for Tummies, a digestive and gut health range of supplements. Welcome to today's live video. You may be watching this live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. You may be watching it later on catch up. But if you've got any questions, either during the live or when you're watching it on catch up, don't hesitate to post them below this video. We'll try and cover them during the video. But if you're posting them when we're not live, we'll still get back to you. So don't worry about that. So before I introduce my very special guest, I'm so pleased to have her speak to us today because she is such a busy lady, very sought after in her work. And so I'm going to introduce Ros Palmer, clinical hypnotherapist, but much more than a clinical hypnotherapist. Ros has got lots of strings to her bow. Before I invite Ros, I just want to say that Ros has got an excellent website with a lot of free information, and her life story is on her website. And I would encourage you to make yourself a cuppa or pour yourself a glass of wine and sit down, get yourself comfortable and read through Ros's very, very informative website. So today's video is called Detox Your Mind. And for those of you who know me, I talk a lot about detoxing the physical body, in particular the digestive system. But it's very important as well to detox the mind, because we know that there are psychosomatic illnesses. These are illnesses, physical illnesses, that are caused by mental disturbances, trauma, stress of the mind. So without further ado, I am going to invite Ros into our live video. Hi there, Ros.
Hello. How are you, Linda?
I'm good, thanks, apart from this irritating cough
Yeah.
that's driving me nuts.
What's going on there? Well, we'll detox you from it, Linda. We'll get rid of it.
Oh, do you think it's something psychosomatic?
Well, you never know. But as you know,
you never know. It's something that I'm not able to say verbally.
Come to it from both sides, and then you're like, belt and braces, isn't it?
Well, Ros, as I said in the introduction, thank you so much for giving up your time to speak to us today, because I know how busy you are, and trying to pin you down has been a challenge.
Yes, I know. Between the two of us, we're like, oh yes, I think we can find a date sometime.
We've been meaning to do it for quite a while, haven't we?
We have. We've been circling round it for quite some time, haven't we? Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we got here today, because I know that it's such a fascinating subject, Ros, and I know that you are much more than a clinical hypnotherapist, and I want you to talk about rapid transformational therapy a little bit later. But before we go on to that, Ros, can you just, I know that you've led a very full, exciting, challenging, inspiring life. And when I talk to people about you and try and describe you to people, your ears might be burning sometimes. I say that Ros has lived the lives of 10 people. Maybe a slight exaggeration there, Ros, but you have packed so much into your life. And you've had highs, you've had lows, but you always bounce back, Ros. You're so positive, aren't you?
Yeah, and I think that's my karma. That's my life lesson. It's not about sort of what happens. It's about how you come through it and who you are as you come through it, after you come through it. For me, and maybe I have the benefit of a bit more age and more wisdom, because I'll be honest, some of the periods I've been through in my life were not fun when I was going through them.
I know.
But I really now, there's a great I like walking, and I live in Lincolnshire, so it's quite flat, really, although we are quite near the Wolds, which, you know, are hills. But
Yeah.
if ever I get anywhere near any proper like mountains, like Derbyshire or Scotland, or somewhere where suddenly it's a bit kind of perilous and exciting, and you're rambling along and you think, oh, I better stay to the path. There are cairn stones. And so if you've ever been to a Lanzarote or any of those, people put them on the beach, you know, when they put those piles of stones one on
Yeah.
top of the other. And in fact,
Yeah.
it's the cover of my book, funnily enough. And I didn't realize I was naturally drawn to them just because they look nice, don't they? But cairn stones, traditionally for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, were the little things that were left by one walker or pilgrim or somebody taking a perilous route to say to the people coming behind them, this is a safe route. This is the safe.
I never knew that.
Yeah, this is the safe path. This is the path. Stay on this path. Don't go on that one. Stay on this path. And so the little stones, these piles of little stones, that's what they're there for. And so I now, you know, without sounding grandiose, because I'll be honest, I've been through so much in my life, you do need to make sense of it. And I have made a lot of sense of it and had a lot of time to think about it. I'm now those cairn stones. And so the things I've been through are, look, you might be going through this, you might not be knowing you're on the right path, and trust me, there's probably a really perilous and a big drop and you don't want to go there, and it's maybe cloudy and you can't even see the path. But when you see those cairn stones left by somebody who went before you, you know that you're safe. And so I do see everything I've experienced as now being that it's my duty in a way to be those cairn stones. So that's it, really. That's me.
Yes. Well, can you tell us a little bit, briefly, Ros, because you've done so much in your life, a little bit about, you know, your life story? You don't have to tell us, you know.
No. I tell you what.
I know you worked in London. You had a very successful PR marketing business in London. So just tell us a potted history, if you don't mind.
I'll tell it you very quickly, and I'll also tell you what I know about it now, having reflected, you know, from where I'm at. So, grocer's daughter, grew up in Nottingham, lived above the shop, very, very humble upbringing. In fact, they pulled our shop down for slum clearance when I was 5. My grandma worked in a mill in Keighley. My other grandma, they were shopkeepers. So many generations of very working class, salt of the earth people. And then because they pulled the shop down, Dad was an entrepreneur, really, back in the days before entrepreneurs. And he did quite well. He built some shops in Arnold, which you're very familiar with, Linda. In fact, not very far away from where you live. And we moved to the posh suburb of Woodthorpe. And I grew up going to school there, but it was a state school. I ended up at a comprehensive. But I always felt like an outlier. I always felt like an outsider. And I think it's because we lived in a posh neighborhood, but we were very, very fundamentally working class. Mum and Dad didn't really have friends in that area. Also, I was very ill as a child. I had misdiagnosed whooping cough and German measles, and I literally died when I was 18 months old. And so my parents were told, your baby is dead. They then pumped me full of antibiotics. I was in an isolation hospital for 7 weeks, which now as a therapist, I realized was quite traumatic to an 18-month-old baby, not being able to be near its parents. Wow. And so I think I always had that sense of, it's up to me, there's no safety net. I'm a bit of an outsider. At school, because I didn't breathe very well because of my lungs, my mum sent me for elocution lessons. So look, I speak well, but when I was at comprehensive school in Arnold, I was the one being bullied. The posh girl, the one who thinks she's above herself. Also, I had very discoloured teeth because they gave me tetramycin antibiotic. So I was very bullied, very excluded. I was not the popular girl. So I took solace in books, in learning. It was the time of Encyclopedia Britannica and the Reader's Digest, and, you know, bury yourself in books and creativity. My nickname at school was the Walking Dictionary. You know,
Did you have any friends at school?
Not well. Here's what happened. So when I was 15, the NHS, who realized that they should never have given me those terrible antibiotics when I was little and I was having a really terrible time with my teeth, started to crown my teeth. So in between the age of 15 and 19, I had all my teeth crowned. So suddenly it was like that weird, you know, those weird films of Miss Smith, you're beautiful, you know. And I went from, you know, kind of being just the swotty, ignored girl in the corner who nobody would ever invite to any party, to being the most popular girl, you know, the one, went out with the kind of the head boy. And so it was very interesting, but very, you know, and I look back on it now and I see that that made me who I am, because I went on to do an English degree. I'm a very deep thinker. I love my own company. You know, it doesn't bother me if I was just reading a book for 3 days and not talking to anybody.
I'm just the same.
Yeah, but equally what happened with the kind of, hello, Miss Smith, you're beautiful, I suddenly became this very, well, as we know now, extroverted introvert. And so I became this, it was like I made up for lost time. It was like, you know, nobody's been my friend or talked to me for like 15 years. I'm going to make up for it. So by the time I went to university in London at 18, I was like the life and soul of the party. So probably not surprising, I fell into PR. I worked in theatre PR to start with, all West End productions. It was amazing. I went to the opening night of Phantom of the Opera and you name it. And then I ended up at Lynn Frank's PR, which is what the whole TV series Absolutely Fabulous is based on. And that was absolutely bonkers. It was like Wolf of Wall Street meets Ab Fab. You know, they were like celebs wall to wall, every fashion designer. I'm hanging out with Daniel Day-Lewis and the Rolling Stones, you know, and there are these thoughts over and over again going, I am a grocer's daughter from Nottingham. It was very much not my world. Most of the people in the 80s in that world were privileged. They'd gone to the right schools. I remember one girl said to me once, isn't it lovely when we're paid, I have pocket money for the weekend? And I was like, I live on mine. I pay my rent. And she was like, oh, how novel, you know, like, so I lived in this strange world. I then met a man who I married who went to Gordonston. My first date was a double date with Prince Andrew, but we'll move on from that. So I did live in this very strange and weird London world in the 80s and then into the 90s. And then I created my own PR company because I was made redundant. And I had amazing clients, British Airways, McCain, the chip people, Tony Robbins. So what happened was I started being very attracted about how the mind worked. When I was at Lynn Frank's, I wasn't very well. Because I'm working 80-hour weeks and it was life in the fast lane and we drank a lot, Linda, you know, it was the 80s. I mean, luckily I never got into drugs, thank God. Burning the candle at every end. And my body, which was very compromised from all of those years of antibiotics and not being well, literally seized up. I was having no periods. I had an irritable bowel. I was on tablets for this, tablets for that, psoriasis, you name it. Thank God at Lynn Frank's, because they were all Buddhists and kind of into kind of weird complementary medicine that I'd never heard about. They were like, you need to go and get yourself sorted out. So I used to go to the Hale Clinic and have colonics.
It's no longer there, is it, unfortunately?
Yeah, Princess Diana once went in before me. She was the client before me. I went to the Hale Clinic. I used to go to Shrubland Hall, which was a hardcore health place. I had an Ayurvedic doctor. I became vegetarian. I used to have acupuncture. I used to have massage. So at a time when that probably wasn't very common, it kept me alive. My mum used to think I was mad and joined a cult, and it was all a bit weird. So I then got into personal development and I ended up doing the PR for Tony Robbins. I ended up doing the PR for Robert Holden, Brandon Bay. So I learned all about epigenetics, mind-body connection, NLP, hypnotherapy. I did a course with Paul McKenna. I learned, and I had hypnotherapy for myself for some of my limiting beliefs and blocks. So I ended up in a very interesting world, right? Genuinely at the heart of it. I ended up with a big house in London. I mean, big house in London. I had a driver at one time, Linda, and a nanny and a villa in Spain. So I lived this very glamorous, weird life. I saw behind the curtain because I was at very, very close quarter with very famous high level people, royalty, celebrities, these gurus. And yet I was pretty normal, really.
Were you happy, Ros? Were you happy back then?
Well, this is the issue, Linda. I wasn't. I was very unhappy a lot of the time because keeping up that being an extroverted introvert, I just felt like I was wearing a mask, and I was very good at it. But there were a lot of times I was like, I don't even know who I am. And can I get off this merry-go-round, this do more to be more to get more? It's lovely having a great big house and kids at private school, but you've got a great big mortgage and great big school fees. And you've got 21 staff and a villa that costs money. And it was really about me. In fact, my first husband, my ex-husband, his nickname for me was the cash cow. And so basically I sacrificed, that poem, she spent her health to gain her wealth. And then with might and main, she turned around and spent her wealth to gain her health again. Yeah. That was me. I ended up with cancer. I was bulimic. I had dengue fever. And my Ayurvedic doctor said to me one day, I almost don't want to see you anymore because I'm not sure you're going to walk through that door one day or not. He said, because I'm not sure if the physical or the mental breakdown is going to come first. And so I kind of got through the 90s, sold my business, moved overseas, but the damage all came afterwards. And then my whole life imploded. I was in the Bahamas. My life imploded because my dad had a stroke. Then I got breast cancer. Then my mum got terminal pancreatic cancer. My dad tried to kill himself. And then I discovered that my ex had pretty much gone through our life savings. This was not a good 18-month period, I think, by anybody's stretch of the imagination. And I'd adopted a child. And so I was dealing with all of that.
How did you cope with all that, Ros?
Only just, Linda. Only just. I'll be honest. I came probably that close to checking out.
Yes.
I tell you how I coped. I coped through faith. Okay, faith. I had a strong Christian faith at the time. My faith now is a bit more interesting. It's grounded in a Christian faith. But I'm a lot more spiritual, shall we say, in the wider sense of the word. But I always knew there was something more. I always had this feeling it was for a reason and this too shall pass. And I couldn't do it when I nearly did kill myself. I couldn't do it because my dad had had a stroke and my mum had died and he was in a really bad place and I had a kid. So I was like, I can't do this. But I did spend a whole night with a lot of tablets and a bottle of whiskey, really, really thinking about it. I mean,
in the Bahamas then when you were living?
No, that was when I was back in England, actually, because I came back to England. My mum died shortly afterwards. I was still having cancer treatment. My dad, was not in a good place. I discovered the financial loss. So having left in a blaze of glory, I came back a single unemployed mother in Arnold, not knowing anybody because my life had really been in London and overseas for a long time. I wasn't in.
We didn't know each other back then, did we?
No, we didn't. I literally lived about a mile away from you, but we actually didn't know each other then. And so I'm from Yorkshire stock. I'm from good working class stock. You ask me how you get through. You're resilient because I think you have a strong resilience gene within you. I mean, and literally you live what you learn and when you learn what you live. And I grew up around very strong grandmas. One was both of them had been widowed very early. I grew up around proper working class, really resilient people.
Yeah,
And
that did I, you know, with my
with it, don't you? You pull your boots up and you get on with it. And so, and I had, luckily, because I'd worked with Tony Robbins and Brandon Bates, and I'd even been to see Marissa Peer for therapy in the 90s, I had a strong understanding about NLP, hypnotherapy, about my mind and my body. So I came at my healing from both sides, and I got myself back again. I became, I worked for a training and development company. Then I became head of marketing for an international charity, the Leprosy Mission. And there's nothing like standing in Mumbai under a 6-lane motorway with people with no fingers and one eye, who live under tarpaulin, and they offer you a custard cream, and you know that's their entire day's wage. And you have to take it, really, because that would be rude not to. And they're there with a tin cup, and you're there. And I went all over Africa and India. I went with Anne Widdecombe, as you probably know, because she was one of our vice presidents. So I've had a couple of very interesting trips to Africa. And it's incredibly humbling. And I tell you what, boy, does that put things in perspective. Yeah. I then had a not successful second marriage, which is when I met you, Linda. And in fact, I remember very clearly a car.
Your not successful second marriage had nothing to do with me, Ros.
No. I remember very clearly a car journey when you said to me, I think you deserve better. And you might forget that. But actually, and I'm not blaming you in any way, shape or form, we all make our own decisions. I needed to hear that, Linda. I was at a point where it was like, I need something else. I can't compromise who I am. I'm not for everybody. I'm really not everybody's cup of tea. But you can't not be who you are, or the best you, or the truth of you, or your values. It's your values. You can't let go of your values. They're the DNA. They're the lettering in your skegnetic of rock. And I think I had reached that point, and you, thank you, literally held a mirror up and allowed me to see it. And that's what I do with my clients. A lot of the time, if I'm doing coaching, I just hold a mirror up. You know what? We really know inside who we are and what we want and what we should be doing and what works for us. So I came through that.
We just need to be in that safe space with that person that we trust implicitly to guide us, to coach us, to be able to see that, that reflection in the mirror.
You do. And so that's what I'm saying. So thank you. And yeah, so I then retrained in rapid transformational therapy, clinical hypnotherapy, and NLP coaching. All came at the right time. I was just thinking, what next? Marissa Peer invited me to join her pioneer group of trainers for rapid transformational therapy. And I suppose, really, Linda, I haven't looked back since, have I? Really?
You haven't, have you? Because I think, since you trained in clinical hypnotherapy, rapid transformational therapy with Marissa, I think your star has just continued to ascend. And I think your health as well, that's continued. Yeah. Your health, your relationships have continued to improve.
Yeah, I'm in the best relationship of my life. And I'm 61, Linda, and I'm in really good shape. I'm really happy. I sleep without sleeping tablets, and I don't drink, very occasionally. If I was at a wedding, I'd have a glass of champagne. And yeah, I'm not pious. I enjoy myself. This is, I hope I am a cairnstone beacon for other people that, you can get your life back.
Well, I've read some of the testimonials, Ros, from people who have, who have sought help from you, and there are amazing testimonials. So, shall we move on then? So, yes. As I mentioned earlier, we know that thoughts can become things, psychosomatic illness, from mental disturbances. And I taught, being a natural health therapist that specialises in the stomach and gut, the digestive system, I talk a lot about detoxifying the organs of digestion. but you know, we need to talk about this organ, the brain, trauma, stress. So I've got a list of questions, so if we can just take one at a time. And right, so why clinical hypnotherapy? So you benefited from it and then decided to train it and offer it, but then did you train in rapid transformational therapy? What came first?
Well, I did both at the same time. So yeah, I did both at the same time. So because rapid transformational therapy really is next generation clinical hypnotherapy, if you want. Its basis is clinical hypnotherapy. Clinical hypnotherapy is the bedrock, is the foundation for rapid transformational therapy. It is a regression-based therapy on the whole. It's really about getting you into a kind of an altered state, if you like, a relaxed state, an altered state, to go back and understand the root causes or the root damage or the root problem or that thing that you just can't quite put your finger on for unwanted thoughts and behaviors, habits and ways of being. The difference, and I know because I was a trainer for 10 of the courses, and so this was always a question. In fact, on about course 3, half of the audience were clinical hypnotherapists, and I was thinking, why are you training in rapid transformational therapy when you're already a clinical hypnotherapist? Yeah. And so that question came up a lot, and Marissa would answer it, and she would say that with clinical hypnotherapy, a lot of the time, it being really successful, not all of the time, it depends on the therapist, okay, is getting you into that altered state, getting you into that relaxed place, getting you to, you know, go down the kind of alpha, beta, gamma, delta parts of your brain to that kind of place where you're almost deliberately daydreaming. Let's call it that, deliberately daydreaming, like you're off somewhere, but you're not quite gone. And some people just won't go there. Okay, they just won't. I meet them all the time. You can't hypnotize me. Are you going to turn me into a washing machine? Well, no, actually. You know, if I was that good, I'd be a billionaire. I'd have a Ferrari on my drive. And of course, quite a lot of people, let's say, I've had these people, for example, I had an airline pilot recently, and I had a doctor, a surgeon. Now, you would not want an airline pilot or a doctor, or let's say somebody very high up in the military who actually loses control easily. No. You wouldn't want it. I don't want to be on that plane. Okay, I want the pilot who really knows what all those little buttons mean and really, really pays attention and doesn't get diverted. And, you know, I want him to be in control. And the issue is when you have a job particularly, or maybe a personality or a tendency or the way you were brought up, or even in a culture, for example, where losing control is not really an option or not, you know, frowned upon, you're not easily going to relinquish control. Okay. So what's great about RTT is it uses that basis of clinical hypnotherapy, that deep dive, shall we say, that's going in to find the root cause, what's locked in that vault that you don't even know is there and you've thrown the key away and you just can't quite put your finger on. But it's nuanced. So it uses some psychotherapy, you know, talking, understanding. There's a bit called parts therapy and healing the inner child. You know, like, which bit of you's really hurt? What happened when you were younger? Why is that such a trigger for you and such a problem? NLP, that's language. You know, how do we talk to ourselves? What's that horrible voice in your head? Loser, you're going to ruin this again. You know, what's going on there? And some CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, a bit like, how is this world looking now for me and why have I got this world vision? So in a nutshell, it puts those modalities together, those powerful bits of those modalities together. And the results are quite remarkable, actually, Linda.
So thank you for that, Ros. Why are we out of balance then? What's happening?
Well, as you know physically, often why we're out of balance. And of course, there's, you know about the vagal nerve. So I'm just going to deal with the physical thing first. So, the mind and the body are literally linked by kind of a superhighway, the vagal nerve. And you know that, as you've put in your preamble to this talk, that gut feeling you get, I feel it in my gut. The gut is the second brain. And so if you're having really compromised disease, I'm not in balance because of my body, because of something physical, it's very hard to be thinking straight. It's very hard to be feeling happy thoughts and feeling wonderful. And guess what? It works vice versa. So if this is not going on right, if there's some toxic stuff going on in here, it can absolutely affect the body. So A, I acknowledge that, and B, I'm now going to, because I'm talking to the world expert on gut health, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm going to deal with what's going on up here. And so we get out of balance really through some childhood conditioning, through not shutting up those voices in our head, and through a number of things that actually aren't really our fault. And they're to do with the way our brain is wired for survival. So, I often say we're just cavemen with very nice clothes and decent haircuts. And there are parts of our brain, particularly the limbic amygdala, that, brain science will always deal with, that actually are not particularly sophisticated. And because we live in this weird world now where we're bombarded, we're clicking, we're looking, we're bombarded with information, and we're all, it's terrible, and we're wired to kind of find a quick hit, quick fix, a pleasure, the next high, the next thing, because we're in this
the dopamine hit.
100%, which is why kids will get addicted to video games. I mean, think about eBay. You go on eBay, I hope nobody from eBay is watching, so I'm gonna have to be careful I don't get sued here. eBay or other online selling platforms, and you maybe don't even particularly want something, but you get caught up in it and you bid for it, and then they go, you've won. No, you've just paid for something, you've just bought something, but they hit the dopamine reward system. You've won, yeah. And who doesn't want to be a winner? It's like kids on a video game. Oh, you've done that level, so go up to this level and kill even more people, or and we get that dopamine hit. So why are we out of balance? Because there are some very caveman-y bits of our brain and the way we operate, and we're living in a super charged, super stimulus, dopamine-fueled environment.
Okay. I just want to say, welcome everyone, if you're watching this live or if you're watching it on catch-up. My guest today is clinical hypnotherapist and rapid transformational therapist Ros Palmer, and yes, we're talking about detoxing the mind. So you mentioned there, Ros, about really we're cavemen with better clothes and better hairstyles. So what fight? Oh, I've misspelled that. That should be fight, flight, freeze. And why does it stop us from thinking rationally? Because fight, flight, freeze goes back to when we did live in caves.
Well, it goes back to all of our ancestors, Linda, if you think about it. I'm a big fan of those, like, DNA journey type programs and everything.
Oh, yeah, I love them, Ros. I love them.
I absolutely love them, where people go back and find that they were related to, a king or a queen or something. I'm sure I probably wouldn't find that in but who cares? It's really fascinating. And if you think about it, it's not difficult to think about. We are all related to cave people, okay? If our great, I don't know how many times you'd have to say it, grandparents didn't survive, you and I would not be having this conversation now. And as you know, they only had 3 ways of surviving: fight, flight, or freeze. So, they're out, saber-toothed tiger or enemy, they're either going to fight it, they're either going to run away from it, or they're going to hide, okay? And basically, every generation after that was wired in the limbic amygdala, the primitive part of our brain, the caveman part of our brain, with that. Because none of us would be here today. We wouldn't be having this.
And if they didn't move out of the cave to find food, they'd die as well, wouldn't they?
Exactly. So they had to go out, take risks, go places they didn't like, because again, you're right, they would have starved and whatever. So basically, there's only probably about 9 things that you need to know about, not so much the brain, but kind of the way the brain dictates your behavior. There's lots of things you need to know about the brain. I've got a shelf full of it, but we're talking about why do we end up doing what we're doing, feeling how we're feeling, and not being happy. So very quickly, the 9 things are pain versus pleasure. We move towards pleasure and away from pain. The dopamine hit, pain bad, telling you that something is wrong, pleasure good. The trouble is we get addicted to the kind of pleasure, the dopamine hit, and we will mask the pain out. Like if you have a pain in your body, it's probably telling you something important. And so taking a really heavy duty painkiller might really not be letting you
answer. The pain is the warning, isn't it?
Pain's the red light. So pain versus pleasure. Safe and what's familiar, absolutely. I know this cave is safe. I know my tribe is safe. I know this bit of land is safe. I don't know what's beyond there. There might be some really terrible things, but at some point they had to venture out, didn't they? And that's been what happened to us, particularly in the last few years. We literally were in lockdown. We were in this thing. We were told it's safe if you stay indoors. It's safe if you do here. So that part of us was really triggered. And so we want to do new things, we want to explore, but the unfamiliar always feels scary, because to our cavemen ancestors it was the unfamiliar could equal death. Okay. What is expected tends to arrive. So we have a part of the brain that's a filter, the reticular activating system, and it filters a lot of extraneous information out, because otherwise we would overload like a computer with too many downloads. But the trouble is we can get very fixed on it. So, if you have an expectation, let's say you go to, I don't know, a foreign country. I'm not going to name the country, but let's say you've never been there and your next door neighbor is from there, and they say, "Oh, don't go there. Everybody's terrible." Everybody's terrible. They're all going to try and rob you. It's going to be awful. Watch your change when you're in a restaurant. They're all going to try and shortchange you, everything. You're going to be on that. You're going to have that going on. And what will happen is you'll look for it and you'll find it.
You'll attract it.
So you'll probably meet 10 people and probably 9 of them are lovely. But when you meet the 10th one who does the thing that you think is going to happen, you'll come home and you go, "You were right. Let me tell you, I was in that restaurant and they shortchanged me." So what tends to be expected turns up. We see the world through visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, as you know. Either we feel, we hear it, we see it, and whatever our primary sense is, and we're all different, is going to influence us more. Emotion always beats logic. So you've been trying to think yourself out of an issue, and yet that gut feel, that overwhelm, that just doesn't feel right, and you don't do it. It's because your emotion is overruling your logic. And guess what? It always will do. Always, 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 always. It will do. You can have the best will in the world. I am not going to lose my temper with my children tonight. And then, words we say. So that's the voice in your head and kind of what you hear yourself saying. Mind obeys us. So if you will say something to your mind like, "Oh, I know I'm going to fail." I mean, can you imagine if, let's think, Usain Bolt. Can you imagine if Usain Bolt used to say to himself at the start of every race, "Oh, you're going to fall over"?
He probably would have done.
He would have done. And so he will have worked on his mindset as much as his racing. And his mindset would be, "You're going to come out the thing, you're going to do brilliantly. I see myself going past the thing." So the mind obeys us. So be careful what you tell it. Thoughts create physical reactions, goes without saying, really, but, you know, there wouldn't be girly mags if they didn't. You know, just thinking about stuff that can have a very physical reaction. And opposing ideas, this is an interesting one, can't be held at the same time. So let's say you're a supermodel, you've been a Victoria's Secret model, and your whole career depended on you being super wafer thin and looking amazing and never putting an ounce of weight on. You meet a rock star, you marry, he goes, darling, let's start a family. You cannot get pregnant, and you try and try and try. And it's because deep in your subconscious is that thought and that wiring of, my career will be over if I put on weight. And so you have to literally remove that deep-seated, this is where the hypnotherapy, the deep dive comes in. You have to remove that deep-seated belief that you may be not even consciously aware of before what you think you want can line up.
Yes, yes. Okay, so talking about children, shouting at children, trying not to shout at children. So old hurts from childhood. Why do they keep coming back to make us feel bad? And also, Ros, can you give any quick tips, if possible, to new parents, and what they shouldn't say to their children?
So I'm a big fan.
I know we could perhaps do a whole video on the inner child.
Yeah, succinctly, so people get some good wisdom to take away. I'm a big fan of Pink. Okay, you know, the pop star, and she has a great song called Family Portrait. And in her song Family Portrait, it's like they've got that lovely portrait on the sideboard. I lived in the Bahamas and we did that one year, you know, where you're all wearing jeans and white shirts and sitting on the beach, and you have that lovely, lovely sideboard picture. And what her song is, that behind that picture, it's like Armageddon. You know, they're falling out. The parents are on the verge of divorce. It's really terrible. But the interesting line she has in that is, you know, mummy, daddy, please stay together, more or less. I'll be better. Because in a child, yeah, it's a really poignant. Really go and look at the words of that song. It's really poignant. And
Did she write it herself, that song?
It was actually based on her actual childhood, which is really sad. Family Portrait, Pink. And the trouble with a child, but you know, the reality with a child is their little world is their little microcosm. Their little world is their little universe. I remember seeing, I mean, it's nearly the coronation, so this is very timely. Princess Anne interviewed once, and somebody said to her, so what was it like growing up as a princess? And she went, well, I didn't really know. I just grew up as a little girl. You know, okay, she grew up in a palace, you know, like, and it was all very strange. It wasn't really my childhood. But you know, your little world is your little world, okay? And because you want your little world to continue, let's go back to the cavemen, to feel safe, to feel you to feel important, you to get your validity in that world, it all to be nice and safe and lovely. When it starts to not be, mummy and daddy are fighting, they're screaming at each other, oh my God, one of them might leave, you think it's your fault. Okay, you just think it's your fault. You're like, if I'm better, if I was better, if I did better, if I was better, if I was more quiet, more good, more lovely, whatever, you know, you do that. And so, and unfortunately, a lot of schooling, and, you know, I can't speak so much now, but when I was a kid particularly, you know, we were very schooled in colour within the lines, you know, colour within the lines, don't go outside the line. I am not a colourer within the lines, Linda. I have not lived my life within the lines, Linda. You know, I was not the girl who could colour within the lines, and I was made to feel wrong. I was made to feel a failure. I was made to feel bad. You know, you're the one being asked to stand up in front of everybody in class and read, and you're super embarrassed and you can't do it, and you start to stutter, and everybody laughs at you. You know, so there are a lot of very negative experiences all the time with children that just make them feel like a failure, just make them feel like
it's heartbreaking though, Ros, because I look at my little granddaughter Jessie, who was 3 in February, and I just want to keep her at the age of 3 forever.
And protect her.
And protect her. I don't want her to grow up and be hurt.
Because
anyway.
it's difficult out there. It's a jungle, isn't it, Linda? So you asked me, well, what could parents do? Well, what this voice that you grow up with, okay, and I get it's for a reason, don't put your hand in the fire, don't cross the road without looking both ways, but there's been lots of research done, and children, well, all of us, we hear the word don't or not or bad or whatever about 5 times to a ratio of what you hear, the good. Okay, so what would you do as a parent? Well, catch them doing the good. If you're going to tell them about the bad, catch them doing the good, and actually make a 5-to-1 ratio. Okay, and I'm not saying something ridiculous like, oh, you're the best at this, but I loved the way you shared your toy with your friend. I saw that, and that was lovely. Done, job done. I loved, try that green vegetable, just have a mouthful. Okay, if you don't like it, mummy won't make you eat the whole lot. Let's not go back to those days, because I see a lot of people with eating disorders because of that sort of nonsense that went on, trust me. But try it, and if you don't like it, that's fine. So there's a great book called The Conscious Parent, okay, and it's really about being conscious about the impact you're having on them. And I think you need to be aware of this negativity bias that we get and the don'ts they get, and actually ×5 it for the good. But the best thing you can do as a parent for your child is fix yourself.
Fix yourself.
Fix yourself. Get rid of your own crap. Get rid of your own childhood problems and that inner child. That's what I'm talking about. The psychotherapy part, that inner damage that you're carrying. Heal yourself. Get some help. I'm here. Okay. I don't normally plug myself, but genuinely, I am good at this stuff. Do
you work with children, Ros, or is it just adults?
I do deal with children. I don't tend to deal with really little children, because I've got somebody I refer them to, because I do think there's a sort of but I've dealt with bedwetting. And recently I dealt with a 10-year-old who was having, because they're just, oh my God, they're examined out of existence. He was at some quite pressurized private school where at 10 already, like a bunch of exams and stuff. And the poor little thing was really, going into shutdown. And so we had 2 sessions, and it's been like night and day. He just wanted to be heard. He just needed to understand that, okay, you're not so good at maths, but you're brilliant at English and art, so bring some of that into that, and, let's get through that, and let's find ways to do it. So, I
sometimes it's not enough to hear it from the parents. They need to hear it from someone else.
He had lovely parents, but fundamentally, they're quite high flyers, and they've got him in quite a high flyy kind of school. And in their world, that's going to give him the best. Okay. And I'm not here to say it won't or it will not, but he just needed somebody else to kind of hear him out, and just to really celebrate what was brilliant in himself. And also get some transferable skills and mindset for the things he loved onto the things that he was starting to get some blockages for. So I do love working with, and young people. I've dealt with loads of anorexics, lots of late teen anorexics, and I've probably, because I was bulimic for quite a long time, I get why you might have an eating disorder. Also, I am a trained weight loss hypnotherapist. So yeah.
Can I just ask you as well, Ros, about energy? And about, I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit sensitive, but I can meet someone and I can feel that their energy is quite dense. It's negative. It's negative, and they're not very nice to be around. There's nothing wrong with them,
No.
They've not said anything to upset me, nothing like that. But I can just pick up on their energy, and they do tend to be quite negative in outlook as well.
Yeah, so interestingly, I think we all, but a lot of us during particularly lockdown, we went within, didn't we? And we went on a journey. And my journey was, I went on a spiritual awakening. Okay, I did 2 soul alignment courses. And I actually realized that, and I am going to blow my own trumpet here, I don't do it very often, but part of my genius is I do pick up empathetically on that energy from people. I'm trained, you know, I've got certificates, I've read more books than most people have had hot dinners, and I've got this oodles of life experience, but also, and I do believe it's what made me really successful in PR. Because at the end of the day, PR is about people, it's about reading situations. And I've got stories and anecdotes going back to my childhood in the 80s and the 90s about how I didn't like being around people, how I went for interviews with people. I went for an interview with Max Clifford.
Oh, yes.
And he offered me a job and I turned it down at a time when I really needed a job.
Okay. Why then?
I didn't like his energy. I did not like his energy. I had Gary Glitter in my room at university as I was ENTS officer, and there was something very odd about that situation, and I didn't like it. I was nearly the first victim of the UK's biggest serial rapist, and I got away in the 80s. And again, I've always had an antenna about energy, and I've never been able to quite understand it. So I did a lot of work in the last 2 years about it. And what I understand is 100%, it's an absolute phenomenon, and we do emanate an energy. I suppose my caveat would be that I think a lot of people who give off a bad vibe or a bad energy, it's because they're in a bad place. Okay. Yeah. It's not necessarily that they're a bad person. Okay. And it's horrible being them, actually.
It must be.
It's really horrible being them, because fundamentally that energy is all, you know, going on in here. And so, yes, I'm the same as you, Linda. And before I do even an RTT session or even a coaching session, I protect my energy, because in the very early days when you probably first knew me, I was getting ill a lot because I was actually picking up, you know, I'm dealing with people who've been raped and had terrible things happen to them. And I was picking up on that hurt and that energetic damage. And I had to learn how to kind of literally put a kind of a protective shield around myself.
So you know, in your training then, Ros, was that not a module in your training?
No, not when I trained, but it probably is now, because as you know, I was on the pioneer course, and it's kind of 8 years down the line now. And, you know, I think that it's way, way, way beyond what it was. So, but no, I was not, I kind of went into that one with my eyes wide shut, to be honest, Linda.
Yeah. And it's never been included in any of the courses and studies that I've done over the years as well.
No, I do know now people who do it, but they tend to be, you know, like I say, more these kind of soul alignment, or, you know, things that we would have called woo-woo at one time. And in fact, I'm working with somebody this year, the rest of this year, who is what probably we would call a shaman. She is very much an energy healer. She's a Reiki. She kind of talks in tongues. And we're going to co-create, hopefully, a course, because I genuinely think there is a bridge to be had between what I know from my sort of sensible business background, and that leaders and people aren't afraid of working with me, because I can bring hey, I used to run a PR company and I was a businesswoman, and I don't seem too witchy and weird. But I think they could benefit. And I tell you what, more and more I have very high, powerful CEOs and MDs, men and women. And within a couple of sessions, they're sort of telling me things that you really wouldn't expect about all of this.
Yes. Well, that's obvious, because, as I said earlier, they feel as though they're in a safe space and trusted.
Yeah.
Right. So toxic hurts and why? So fear, guilt, obligation. We all feel fear, guilt, obligation at certain times in our lives. These are normal feelings.
They are, but if you look at it cleverly, they spell fog.
Yes.
They spell fog. And we get this mind fog, don't we? We get, and this is particularly in relation to boundaries. You know, you hear people all the time, and we all have it. Oh my God, I allowed that person to burst my boundary. Oh my God, just getting that WhatsApp from my, you know who, whatever relative or whatever, triggers me. You know, I'm already feeling this Pavlovian.
It's like you didn't open it up, you don't want to read it.
I don't want to open that WhatsApp message or that email because that person triggers you. They burst your boundaries, they don't respect you. And that can be to do with so many reasons, but all I'm going to deal with is the fact that you feel like that and probably quite rightly, because that person probably isn't respecting your boundaries. That person probably is a narcissist and they like to control you, or that person is used to you playing a role where you back down and they, you know, and it's been going on maybe for years. And so when people say, oh, I'm getting my boundaries burst, and who doesn't really, I will say, well, you're feeling a fog. I feel, oh, I can't know way out of it. And it's because you're mostly being propelled by fear. Okay, fear that if I stand up to this person, or if I stop this, if I stand up for myself, I'm alone. I'm unlovable. Nobody will love me. I'm going to be rejected. It's going to be terrible. I'm fearful. You know, why does a battered wife stay with a husband, or even a battered husband with a wife? Okay, I know that domestic abuse goes both ways. Yeah. It's because also the fear is that unknown, that world. Okay, this is my cave. It's not a very nice cave, but it's my cave, and I don't know what's going to be going on in that world out there. So fear, obligation. Now, the biggest thing about obligation is that you think you're responsible for their feelings, and you'll know that a narcissist or somebody will always blame you. Oh, the reason I hit you is because you really, really annoyed me. And you know that if you stacked the dishwasher properly, or if you didn't do X, Y, and Z, I'm sorry, but it's your fault. So it's like obligation, that somehow you are responsible for their feelings or bad behavior. And then guilt. And again, that's very much like, it's my fault, going back to the pink and the childhood thing. So those really get in the way of you having that clarity to go, you know what, I'm not accepting this. It's not good enough. And I'm going to put some boundaries, and I'm going to say no, and I'm going to be different.
I'm just thinking out loud that, you know, say it's a domestic abuse situation, whether it be a male or a female, you know, that's suffering the domestic abuse. They're in a really bad place, aren't they?
They are, and they'll have been having their self-esteem completely eroded, you know, so they're not going to be in a place, you know. Look, I was not in a good place in my second marriage. It wasn't, you know, domestic abuse or anything, but I really lost sense of myself. I hit the menopause, as you know. My dad had died. I'd hit a kind of a glass ceiling in my career. And I just really lost a sense of who I was. And I put up with a lot of things that I tell you what, I would not put up with today.
I remember.
Yeah.
You always, back then, to me, you were always, trying to please Ros.
Exactly. There we go. Obligation or the guilt. Oh, it's my fault. If only I was thinner, nicer, sexier, more fun, you know, which is very difficult when you've just come through cancer, your dad's died, and you're going through the menopause, you know, but you still are thinking, oh, if only I was, you know, that version of me 10 years ago or whatever. Well, no, be who you are today. So yeah, I definitely was compromised by the fog.
Okay, moving on. So what are rules and what are the should rules? Oh, and just one thing I want to say as well, I read your presentation, which is absolutely fascinating, and this is where I read what are rules and I've never heard of rules.
I stole it, I'll be honest, from AFES, from Vishen, the guy who runs Mind Valley. Vishen came up with this, but I was I'm having that. And they're bullshit rules, Linda. They're bullshit rules. And basically you will always live by your rules, okay? And again, you grow up with rules, and of course a lot of them are really good, you know, like don't kill people and don't do those terrible things, you know, all those don't.
Sorry, Ros, are rules the same as your values then?
Your values come from the rules in which you grow up. So
Okay.
your values are slightly different, I suppose, in a way. How would I explain that? If you were in the gold rush and you were panning for gold, your values are the golden nuggets that are left behind when you've done everything, and that you're really going to take away, and they're the things that you really value and really treasure. But the rules are going to be all around. You know, you can only go and look for gold in between the hours of 8 and 10, and of course, you know, we have to have rules, okay, you know, to have a civilized society. I'll be honest, but it's a conversation not for now. I do think there are too many rules, and quite, you know, the kind of nanny state.
Oh yes, let's go there.
We won't go there, Linda. But of course, rules on the whole are there to keep us safe and to keep us civilized and to make it fair for everybody. But the rules in which you grow up might not be the rules in which I grow up. So let's say, for example, I grow up in Africa in the middle of a tribe. You know, rules might be all sorts of weird and wonderful things that, you know, boys at 15 have to go out and do weird ceremonies and have strange tattoos. And rules might be that girls at 15 are married and, you know, they have children by 16, you know, whatever. Whereas we think that incomprehensible in England. And yet, you know, if you grow up Jewish, you're going to have rules. If you grow up Catholic, you're going to have rules. So the point is, within your family, within your community, within your society, within your country, within your religion, within that, you're going to have a bunch of rules, okay? And then you will go on to have your values. And some of those will be shoulds and some of those will be musts. And so a must will be, you know, I'm never going to break it. So let me give you a good example. If you marry somebody and your rule is you must not commit adultery and you must be faithful to me, and their rule is you shouldn't commit adultery and you shouldn't be, you can see where trouble will happen, okay? And neither of you have actually broken your rules, because yours was a must and yours was a should. So when I hear people say things like, oh, you know, I should lose weight, I should go to the gym. Tony Robbins said they're shitting all over them. So I'm going to refer to people, Bishop and Tony Robbins, and I can't put it any better than what both of them have come up with. And you know it's not going to happen, or you know they're not going to stick to it. But when it's a must, you know, I must not.
It's a statement, isn't it? I must.
It's an absolute. I must not eat meat. I must not, you know, whatever. You know they're going to stay to it. So the whole thing about the rules are, or why they're rules, is because you have been foggy. You've unwittingly adopted them. And okay, maybe they worked for you when you were 10 and the world looked like it did in 1970 or 60 and you were living in a suburb of Nottingham or whatever. But now you're 50, you know, and you're living in wherever, and the world is a very different place. And what happens is you still will be being driven by these or constricted by them, or, you know, within them. And they're really not working for you, and you're really unhappy, and you're really like, why am I so unhappy? So all you have to do is work out what are your musts, what are your shoulds, and then just go, is this working for me? And if your musts are still working for you, you know, I must not, I don't know, commit adultery. I must not go out on the Sabbath. I must always go to church on Sunday. I must always stay married, even if my husband beats me every week. But that's what we say in our religion. Okay, I'm not here to judge. I'm just here to say, have a look at them and go, is that really working for me? And do I really benefit from that? And if it's a should as well, I should lose weight, I should go to the gym. What would you need to do to make it a must?
Okay. Great, thank you. So, yes. What is the inner critic? Yes, we all hear as children, adults saying you can't do that or don't be silly. What are the long-term impacts of these put downs, and what are toxic boundaries and safe boundaries? Sorry, that's quite a long question, Ros.
Well, I think we've kind of talked about boundaries a bit in the fog, haven't we?
Yes.
And I suppose a toxic boundary is anything that isn't working for you, fundamentally, and is one of these rules that is kind of keeping you in line or keeping you where you're at, but it actually isn't bringing you any joy or any pleasure, and really you're living in a world that was outdated 30 years ago. And what was the other bit? The inner critic. So the inner critic is that voice, so what we talked about as a child. So the trouble is, when we grow up and we get all these don't put your hand in the fire, don't color outside the lines, line up nicely, children, and we get, you and I are of a generation, children should be seen and not heard, all these kind of weird and wonderful rules. We hear them over and over and over and over and over and over again, and then we grow up, and the trouble is they're on repeat in our head and we don't even know it. And so you still keep hearing that. Who are you to think that you can do that? Don't be silly. You can't do that. Don't even enter that competition. You never win anything. Or there could be rules around money. I'm sure you've interviewed, I do a lot of money mindset work. Money's for rich people. Money is the root of all evil. People like us never have money. That's just not for the likes of us. Whatever it was you heard on repeat will literally be very deep in that subconscious programming of yours. There to keep you safe, really. And your subconscious is going to hang on to it because it thinks, that's what we heard. That's what keeps.
And I suppose, Ros, especially if that put down came from a parent as well.
Totally, totally. If it came, and of course, to be honest, I don't think I'd have work if I didn't have people come to me who, a lot of the damage was done, by their own parents or their schooling or their families or what they experienced when they were very younger. And of course, that the trouble is that voice carries on, and then you're the grown up, but that voice is the very thing stopping you from trying, stopping you from being happy, stopping you from being the best you could be, stopping you from even giving it a go or anything. It will be there. So it's a psychological term. It's in psychology. Okay.
It reminds me of that poem, Ros, by Jenny Joseph, The Warning.
I don't know. No.
It's got a bit of swearing in it. They beep you up, your mum and dad.
Oh, yes.
They may not need to, but they do. They fill you with the thoughts they had and add some extra just for you. And on it goes.
Well, there's your thing about the conscious parent. Get yourself out of the way. Deal with your own hurts, because the trouble is it's like a baton, and generationally it gets passed down.
It does.
So the greatest gift you can do is pass a good baton, pass some great stuff from your family and your upbringing and your culture and your society and your schooling and your parents. Pass some great ones, but the rubbish ones, get rid of that baton. And that's the trouble, because what you will do is hardwire your child for that inner critic, and they, as an adult, continue it. So I call it, Linda, I have a bit sweary, but I do a keynote speech called Putting the Itty Bitty Shitty Committee in Your Head on Mute, because to my mind it's a committee. It's that auntie who was a bit horrible, it's that teacher who was a bit horrible, it was that maybe parent on a bad day. It might be a good parent, but they had a bad day or they were going through a bad phase. But you remember that hurt, you remember that.
Yes, because it can be so deep, especially from someone that you love.
Of course, especially from someone that you love.
Right. So sometimes it's very difficult to face problems, much less talk about them. How can people start this journey? because we know what can happen to the physical body when we internalize emotions.
So get a better internal voice would be one of them. So turn your internal corrections officer to an internal compassion officer. So think, if you had a child, how would you speak to them? What would be the beautiful things you could say to them? You'll know, because you've got your lovely granddaughter. You know, talk to yourself like it, Linda. If you actually talked to your granddaughter how you probably talk to yourself some days, do you think she would like you very much?
No.
No. Do you think it would be really enhancing for her emotional well-being if you were like, oh, for God's sake, you idiot, I can't believe you just did that again? You know, so start being your own inner child. Start creating a compassion officer instead of a corrections officer. So that's one. Rewrite your rules to rules. So I'm not here to question what your rules are. You know, you can be a vegan, you can be whatever you want to be. You can be the biggest carnivore in the world. I'm not here to question it, but work out if it works for you, and work out, are you doing it because it works for you and you've made a choice? Or have you just sort of done it forever and it's kind of what you do, and actually, you know, so turn your rules to rules, turn your internal correction officer to an internal compassion officer. We have something called stinking thinking. So thinking, Linda. So stop the stinking thinking. So the stinking thinking is things, well, they will always make you feel a bit crap, let me tell you. And stinking thinking will be things like all or nothing thinking. Everybody thinks I'm a failure. Everybody thinks. Really? You've questioned everybody in the world? You've done a survey?
A million people.
That must have taken quite some time to work out what everybody thinks, you know. And you get it from other people, you know, people who aren't very good. Oh, everybody thinks that you don't look so good with blonde hair. You should have dark hair. Oh, really? Let me give you my full attention. So this massive survey you did of everybody, who was that? Well, it was me and my mate at work, actually, having a conversation. So, not really everybody then, is it? So you get that all or nothing thinking, and the trouble is you often magnify it when you're putting more pressure on, or other people are putting more pressure on, or everybody thinks this, nobody thinks that. And of course, you know I'm not a fan of the daily newspapers, because they create that thinking. They create that thinking of everybody thinks that Prince or King Charles should blah, or everybody thinks this about Harry, or really?
Well, they just tell lies, Ros. I'm sorry.
And then they'll go, oh, as Alice Insider said. You remember I have a background in PR and behind the curtain. You know, whenever you see that quote, oh, an insider said, really? Oh, you just made that up, didn't you? Anyway, so all or nothing thinking, you get, you know, those voices in your head. You get black and white thinking, you know, it's all or nothing. Like, I'm either going to win or lose. Well, there might be, you might not win, but hey, guess what you've learned along the way? I'm either going to lose a stone or I'm going to fail. Well, you know, I did that last year and I lost 10 pounds. And actually I didn't quite hit the stone, but I felt so much better for the 10 pounds. I actually fit my clothes. I realized it was perfectly enough. And I was like, I don't need to beat myself up for the extra £4. I'm very happy with the £10 loss. Thank you very much. So this kind of all or nothing, you know, break those patterns, catch yourself doing them, and they will really help you, because you will always feel it in your body, because you are putting yourself under pressure. You are creating toxicity with the thinking, and the toxicity will create cortisol, as you know, and it will create dis-ease within your body. Your gut will churn like nothing on earth. You will get an upset tummy. You will maybe even get dis-ease. Having had cancer 19 years ago, I can speak from very personal experience about what shoving toxic thoughts into your body can do to your body. And so work them out. put them into context. Think, did I inherit this? Is this a rule? Is this a should or must? Is this like that internal corrections officer and I'm going to turn it to the other? All of those are really practical, easy, applicable, fantastic freedom ways of getting rid of all of that.
Okay, great. So just briefly then, the permission slip. We sent out a newsletter last week to let all of our database know about today's video. We included the permission slip in that newsletter, Ros. So, and is that available for people to download from your website?
I don't know if it is, but I can make it available.
I had a quick look.
It's mine. I put it together. I don't know if I have actually put it like on somewhere, but funnily enough, I'm having some work done. So let's go with, yes, it will be available next week, Linda, and we will make sure that somewhere people can easily download that.
Okay, great. So in a nutshell then, how do we detox our mind and let go of old hurts? In your presentation that we'll be sharing in a newsletter next week, you mentioned 6 points to live by. What are these? And are these the same? Right. So your free ebook that is available to download from your website.
Yeah, it's called a game changer. Yeah, these
live by these 6 simple rules. Is that the title, Ros?
Yes, is a game changer.
Is a game changer, right? So what are these 6 points to live by?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that because I've not got that in front of me. So who knows? And I'm sure it's brilliant. I know I will have synthesized it together and put.
Sorry, I slipped that one in, Ros.
It's absolutely fine. And there's my PR and marketing background that I like to give people a really handy checklist. But in true form, I've not got it in front of me. But I'm sure. Let me give you. Okay, and apologies if. Well, no, actually, no apology at all, because if the 6 things I've got in my ebook are not the 6 things I'm about to speak to now, you can have 12, aren't you?
Well, surely there's more than 6 things. But...
Exactly. So they will be obviously the 6 ways of really making a difference, which will be things like stopping that fog, creating your boundaries, having the negativity bias of taking consciously 5 times positive experiences against the kind of no and the negative, because the brain has a negativity bias. Learning to take a compliment, finding time for yourself, understanding that brain-body connection. I'm absolutely sure they're all of those things. Learning to breathe, learning to meditate. But before I wrote that book, my signature thing, if you like, was the 5 Fs, but there are 6, to be honest. And what I always said, and this is so easy, which is why I'm just illustrating this point, that even if I had 6 amazing things in my ebook that I can't even tell you here, I know what these 5 are, because you've got 5 fingers, okay? And you've got 5 Fs. And I learned the hard way because I was wealthy, if you like. I had a lot of money in the 90s. I was a millionaire-ess at 40 and miserable. And it was like, oh, I'm going to do so well. I'm going to make my parents proud. I'm going to be wealthy. No, I had money in the bank. I was not wealthy because I was quite broken in other ways. So to have a really phenomenal, healthy, happy, balanced life, you need the 5 Fs, and there are 6. So here we go. Faith. So that's faith either in God or, like you asked me earlier, what brought you through those darkest of times? And I said my faith. Now my faith is much more spiritual, like faith in nature, go to the beach, just walk in a park. I've got, as you know, I have sheep, looking at the lambs are they're so adorable, faith in something beyond yourself, faith in something bigger, something greater, the great connectivity, the universe, faith. Friends and family. So
Is that one? Is that one, friends
Yeah,
and family?
it used to be two, but I've changed it, as you'll see. So friends and family, which is really your relationships. And look, I know I deal with people who've been so abused, let's not even put a gloss on it, at the hands of their family, that if I said to them, oh, you know what you really should do, make friends with your family, they'll be like, I'm out of here. You know, like, sorry, no, that is non-negotiable. This is a must. I must never speak to my whoever again, because what they did was unforgivable. You know, I'm not here to tell you who your friends and family should be. They're basically your tribe, Linda, but you need the connection. You know that people who need people are the luckiest people in the world.
Yes, yes.
Look at it. You know, that's what we're connected beings. We're tribal beings. You need those, you know, your tribe. Okay. So faith, friends and family, fitness, that's exactly what we're talking about here. And fitness is mind and body.
Mm-hmm.
Your mind controls your body controls your mind. You need to look at both. You need to be fit, both internally, your mind, your gut, what's going on with your organs. You need to be fit structurally, you know, exercise, etc. Fitness is key. Without that, you're not going to go very far, are you?
No.
Life will be very burdensome every single day. And then finance, and finance obviously is money, but it's your career. And you don't have to make lots of money. If you're really happy, well done you. I know billionaires who are miserable. I know billionaires who are happy. I've stood in Mumbai and in Africa and in Niger and Ethiopia with people who had nothing, and they were very happy because they were very connected. They had all their family around them. You know, finance or your career is you know, what it means to you. It's really the means to the end.
Yeah.
But if you have money blocks, and a lot of people do ring me, do call me. I'm very good at helping you get rid of those, because I was head of marketing for an international charity, and without people paying it forward and giving money, how would we help all those other people? So there's no shame in earning lots of money or even having excess money. It's really about what you do with it. Okay. So faith, friends and family, fitness, finance, and then the last one is fun.
Fun. Oh, fun. Yeah.
And that's why I put friends and family together, because I did this workshop about 5 years ago about find your values. And I went along and I was really feeling quite happy with myself. And it was like we all sat in a circle and shared our values. Mine were all so bloody worthy, Linda. I felt bored with myself, I'll be honest. And everybody else round the thing had fun and enjoyment. And I was like looking at my list and I thought, it's not even on there. And I got caught up in what we call the when-then cycle. And of course, we grow up with that. When you've done your homework, when you've eaten your greens, when you've whatever, then you can
you can have fun.
Then you can watch wacky races. Then you can have ice cream. Then you can, and of course, schools do it. You know, when everybody's quiet, then we'll go out to play. When everybody's tidied everything away, then we'll whatever. But you grow up in the when then. And I realized I was the queen of when. You know, when I've made another million. I mean, that was back in my PR days. When the house is tidy. When I've lost half a stone. When, then I'll have some fun. No. Make your whens and thens much more accommodating, so that, you know, when I, you know, just get through this difficult meeting today, then I'm going to go out for an hour's walk with the dog and enjoy myself, you know. So have the fun now, have lots of fun along the way, make the rewards tangible. And because, you know, life's what happens when you're busy doing other stuff, and you could be so busy doing all the, oh, I'm going to be so hardworking or whatever, you forget to have the fun. So, and the sixth, if there is a sixth, would be forgiveness, because that's about letting go. That's about letting go of all of these old hurts, which brings us neatly back to the whole crux of this presentation, which is spring clean your mind, detox your mind as well as your body, work out what's going on there at both the conscious and the subconscious level, and let go of it.
I'll say one thing about fun. I mean, since we had a grandchild, she's brought so much fun into our life. She makes us laugh, you know, some of the things that she does and some of the things that she comes out with. Such a joy, really.
Oh, I know. It's amazing, isn't it? And animals, small children.
Yes, yeah.
They work on this purity, don't they? They work on this
the innocence as well.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, just the innocence and just the joyfulness. We've got a question.
Excellent.
Would a bad event that one had in one's former life affect one's gut function now? So you mentioned earlier that during lockdown you'd done some
yes.
soul alignment work. Is that?
Yes, I did some soul alignment work, but I have actually personally done a couple of past life regressions. And I do know RTT, quite a lot of people who train in RTT go on to do past life, because fundamentally the methodology, the principle, which really goes back to those childhood issues. And I've even taken somebody back to the womb. It's the same methodology, but then you kind of continue the timeline, if you like, to go back. Okay. So I don't do it per se. I don't, but I'm pretty well versed in it. So I suppose the quick answer would be yes. The quick answer would be yes. And I'm very aware of karmic ties and karmic history. And if you want actually to give it a little bit of scientific, for anybody who's a bit skeptical, now we're talking about basically past life regression in a way. There's been some very big studies done with second and third generation survivors from Holocaust, second, third generation grandchildren from Holocaust survivors who have grown up in completely terrible environments, have grown up in good, healthy environments, but have had some really compromised gut and eating issues, and also some psychological issues that actually fundamentally go back to the trauma that their parent or grandparent experienced in the concentration camp. And they've done massive studies into it, and it's really been peer reviewed and scientifically shown that we do pass on. So generationally in DNA, we can pass on some physical and emotional issues. And also, of course, the people I know who do past life regressions would argue that from previous lives, and and I'm not here to tell you whether to believe in that or not, but that you can bring that issue forward as well.
Yes, fascinating. Right. Okay, so we've almost finished. How do people contact you, and what approach? Oh, sorry, the typo again. And I'm talking to a woman who's got an English degree.
I'm terrible. I'm like a grammar, we won't. The word that begins with N, and then
I know what you mean. Yes.
Yeah.
I did this in a bit of a rush. I'm going to correct it now.
Okay, so they can contact me. Probably the easiest thing would be at hello@rosalindpalmer.com. That's my email. Or on my website, there's a form to fill in. Or also, you can just sign up for my newsletter. There's like a pop-up that comes up. And if you sign up for my newsletter, then we've got your email and we've got your permission to, send you stuff. And I'm really non-spammy at all. So, I only send things that I think are of real value. So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So, say hi. I'm on Facebook. So basically, if you Google Rosalind Palmer, I'm going to come up. But hello@Rosalind Palmer. And how do people work with me? So I do either individual RTT sessions, and, you can buy one session at a time because we're not going to know how many. I will always do my best to make it as few sessions as possible. This is not a dependency therapy. This is not a therapy that you're still going to be in 6 months, a year's time. And on the whole, most issues react incredibly well between sort of 1 and 3 sessions, 1 or 3 or 4, but you can't know until you go in. I've had people who've come for seemingly quite fixable issues, like they're just not very confident or something, and 3 seconds later we're discovering the layers of the onion. And then conversely, I had a woman who came because she'd been gang raped over a weekend as a teenager. and was now traumatized later on in life, not surprisingly. And one session, we got to the root cause of it. So, the subconscious is a very interesting thing, but I will always give my word that I will work with you to make it as quick and painless and least investment on your part as possible. But I can't guarantee what that's going to look like till we go there. So I then do coaching as well. I have a transformational package where I do rapid transformation and coaching, and that won the Janie Leah Curtis I can't think what they called, the Janie Awards. I won the award for best coach and therapist for that package, and that was based on having given them the results. And I think
Daily Grace.
Yes, and it works really well because people not only go on a 6-week journey with me, but we deal with it both cognitively and unconsciously. I do coaching, ongoing coaching. I'm an NLP coach, and as you know, I've got a very, very blue chip business background. I know what I'm talking about. I'm not one of these coaches who have read it in a book. I do read it in a book as well, Linda, but I've lived it. I was a millionairess. I had a really successful business in my 40s, in my 30s. I can walk my talk, but I won't do coaching with anybody until they've had at least one RTT session. Because I can tell you, if there's something stopping you being successful in business, even if you don't think it's deeply subconscious, I will tell you it probably will be. There will be something going on, a little something that just needs getting out the way. And once that is out the way, you will stop self-sabotaging or procrastinating or whatever it is you're doing in your business that isn't bringing you success. So that's how you can work with me, and that's how you can contact me.
So when it comes to RTT, do you actually like to see people personally, face to face?
No, not particularly. I do. I'm very happy to. I live in Lincolnshire, and I'm in my garden office now. I've got a lovely, one of those purpose-built garden offices, and I've got a very comfortable therapy bed. But even when lockdown came, I was already doing 70% of my work on Zoom because my clients are all over the world. And then obviously for 2 years, I did it all on Zoom.
Yeah.
And it genuinely works just as well as being face-to-face does, because you're very focused like we are now. We're holding space in this little container and very focused with each other. And at the end of the day, I'm going to be leading you through my voice and through what I'm saying. And that's just as powerful over Zoom as it is, or StreamYard at the moment, but I work on Zoom. Yeah. So people can see me. I've had people come from France to see me because they really, in their own minds, wanted to be in the room with me. If that's your deal, I'm happy to accommodate it. Yeah. I've got lovely selection of tea and coffee, so I will make you very welcome. But either way is good.
Okay. Well, for some reason, Facebook won't allow me to edit the text above the video. So what I'm going to do regarding I don't know why, I need to get in touch with them. I don't know if it's a glitch actually, because you were able to edit text above video.
Yeah, I think it did change a while ago. It was very annoying, isn't it?
Did it? Well, what I'm going to do, Ros, is put all your contact details below the video. And obviously, we're going to be sending out a newsletter next week to the database with this video embedded and with all your contact details too. So I just want to thank you so much for being here with me today. We've gone a little over time, but I've got no issue with that because it's been absolutely fascinating and educational, as I knew it would be.
Would you like an extra thing as well, Linda? Would you like me to make a recording just for your group? A rapid transformational recording to detox your mind, probably a little 20-minute recording. I can do that for next week, and you can send it.
That would be fantastic.
With my compliments.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Ros. That would be fantastic. Yes.
We'll do that then.
So what are you doing for the rest of the day?
I'm going to the chiropractor now, actually. Oh. I'm going into Boston because I live quite near Boston. I'm going to the fishmonger because there's a brilliant fishmonger down by the docks. I'm going to the chiropractor, and then I'm having my hair done later. So that's my day. Not bad, hey? What about you, Linda?
I'm going to the gym. You know, I joined this ladies only gym about a year ago. So I'm
Nice.
going there. I don't know if I told you that actually, Ros.
No, I don't think you did. No.
It's only in Arnold, and you know, I've tried private gyms, private personal trainers, local authority gyms, been bored stiff.
Yeah.
But this one I love. And
I
not,
was,
it's not because it's ladies only either, Ros.
I was at Dancercise this morning. I go to Dancercise.
That's what we do at the ladies
Having
only.
a special day with Gino. You know, Gino from,
Oh,
yeah, very exciting. He's coming to Skegness.
you know, from what? From Strictly Come Dancing?
Yes, I'll have to send you. I think it's sold out, Linda, but I'll find out and send you details.
Is he coming to the theatre at Skegness?
I don't know where. I don't even know where the venue is, but I know it's Skegness, and I know he's coming, and I've said yes. That's as much as I know.
That's what I love about you, Ros. You just throw yourself into anything that you do. Anyway, I'm going to say thank you again, and goodbye, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope you found it useful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye for now, then.
Bye.